And we appear to be live. Greetings, Internet. Welcome again to another Ask Me Anything with the Platform.sh Developer Relations team. I'm Larry Garfield, Director of Developer Experience, and joined here today by Robert Douglas, what is your actual job title? Chief DevRel Officer?
Good question, yes. Chief DevRel Officer.
We don't say that to his face, though. Also joined by the newest member of our team, Rudi Weber. Did I pronounce that right? Proper French accent?
All good.
All right. Joins us as a developer relations engineer, specializing in all things JavaScript.
Yep.
And Ottavio Santana will be joining us momentarily. He's just messing around behind the scenes right now. Oh, there. Like I said, messing around behind the scenes. They're paying attention to the Brazilian behind the curtain. For the Americans who get the reference, apparently that's an American reference. Anyway, so this is a very free-form talk, so we don't have anything planned. We're going to hope that those of you watching at home are going to have questions for us, because otherwise this will be a very boring stream. So, well, we wait for people to come up with questions. Robert, what's happening new in your world in platform land that you're able to talk about?
Well, I mean, I just want to go back to the new team member, Rudi, who is really new, like as of last week, so 8 days on the job today, and how excited I am to have somebody who's a real expert in everything JavaScript. So that covers everything from Node.js to React and Vue and Next. And I think one of the coolest things that Rudi has done in the 8 days that he's been on the job is to get us within a centimeter of publishing a Nextjs template. So if I could throw the ball to you, Rudi, do you want to describe to everybody what that's going to do, and when do you think we can expect to see it?
Yeah, well, we are going to be able to see it pretty soon. I think it's pretty close to be merged. So the idea is that anybody would be able to just run a new Next application on platform in a few seconds. You just select your template, and it's deployed, and you have everything you need in order to run your fully server-side rendered Vue.js application.
So that's Nuxt, N-U-X-T,
yeah.
right?
N-U-X-T, exactly. Yeah.
Because there's Next as well, and it's such a confusing space.
Yeah.
Next versus Nuxt. What is the difference to someone who's not completely steeped in all things JavaScript yet?
Well, Next is the framework that is pretty React-oriented, and Next is the one for Vue.js, basically.
Okay. So how would they compare to Express, which is the only other JavaScript server-side framework I know?
Oh, well, Express is mainly if you want to do a server in JavaScript, so anything. Next and Next are there to allow you to build your front-end application with a server-side part. So you have the server-side rendering, but it's more front-end oriented. Express is more for your APIs or to serve anything you want to serve through your server.
Okay. And really the only difference between them is which templating engine they use, essentially?
Well, they work in different ways, and you have different teams working behind them. But Next is really Vue-oriented, so you have everything that comes with Vue, and the whole Vue community that goes with it. And Next is very React-oriented, so that's the opposite, yeah, basically. But the idea is to be able to do the same.
Got it. So which should I use?
What do you know?
Neither.
Well, then I guess it's that question actually comes a lot. Like, what framework should I use in order to create my front-end application, even if it's server-side? And to me, there's no real answer to that other than what do you know? What are the ways of programming that you already know? Do you have enough room in your project to learn something else? So it's really more a matter of like, who's your team, who you work with, what do you like to use? And if you can answer those questions, you will naturally drift towards one framework or another. So that's the same for Next and Next. That would be Vue or React, and you use whatever you feel comfortable using.
So my general answer is I'm mostly a PHP developer, although I do know JavaScript in general.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the idea of heavy compilation on the front end side.
Mm-hmm.
And I like using as much vanilla JavaScript as possible.
Hmm.
I like to keep as straight JavaScript as I can.
I would go towards React. The reason being that it feels when you use React that you have very light, the library has a very light footprint in your project. It really feels like using JavaScript. And in other frameworks or libraries, you have a more heavy footprint that makes you more feel like you're using the engine that comes with it. So for instance, if you use Vue, you have Vue directives that you have to use in your template. That is not the case in React. You just have plain JavaScript, you use JSX, which is then transpiled into JavaScript. So it really feels like doing JavaScript when you use it.
Okay. Yeah, I thought React was one of the heavier tools. I guess it's both. I suppose that it depends what you're comparing it to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It really depends on what point of view you want to look at that.
Yeah, my limited JavaScript fancy tool chain work has been with things like Mithril or Svelte or the other really tiny tools.
Well, Svelte is definitely super interesting. It really takes a whole different way of doing things. So I like to see how this evolves and how it helps the front-end community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know I played with Mithril a little, and the thing I liked about it most was that it didn't have a compilation step. As long as you were okay using modern browsers, it just ran straight, especially when you pair it with HTM, which is a ridiculously small and impressive, like 500 byte templating engine for JavaScript, which I quite liked. So yeah, there's a lot going on there. So those of you watching at home, if you want to not hear Rudy and I talk about JavaScript frameworks for the entire hour, go ahead and ask questions. We'd love to be interrupted. Please.
No, I'm going to save them. I'm going to save them anyway because enough JavaScript. I want to talk briefly about our new guides. I'm going to paste the link to our new guides into all of the various platforms chat, and I see it going out to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and I guess LinkedIn. This is amazing technology, by the way. Streamyard.com.
LinkedIn isn't working
Periscope.
for some reason, but it's on Periscope.
Okay. So hi, Periscope people. I hope you're there. If you're not, well, nobody will read that comment. But anyway, here is the link to new guides that we have written for Typo 3 and Drupal, and we're going to write more guides like those. So if you have a suggestion for what guides you want us to write and create to make your job easier, then go ahead and put a comment in there. But I'm really proud of the work that the team's done on those two guides, because we see a lot of people from the Typo 3 and Drupal communities coming to Platformsh to benefit from our tooling.
Kind of like Otavio, who's just come to this chat.
Yay, Otavio.
Hello.
I thought another topic that we could bring up are two new features that we've introduced, and we could talk about those briefly in case people had missed those. So one of those is the automatic SSH key generation that we've implemented. It used to be. It's called Streamyard.com, and it's awesome.
So, Rob, people who aren't on Facebook probably didn't see the person who asked that question just now.
Right.
So
oh my God, it's like when you're in a conference and somebody asks a question and you can't hear it, and then the presenter just answers the question and you have no idea what they're answering. It's just like that. But
yeah, you made it sound like we launched a new feature on platform called Streamyard, which, well, that's super cool. We didn't.
That was like the complete non sequitur. I totally get it. But look at Otavio was able to put the question right up there on the bottom of the screen, which is also totally awesome. So the question that I'm now answering is the question at the bottom of the screen, which is what software do we use for the stream, which is Streamyard.com, which I've also put into the chat. And now back to the original train of thought. Has everybody noticed the new feature that we have on Platformsh that automatically provisions SSH keys for you so that you don't have to upload your SSH key? I noticed because I got really sick of the workflow of having to like go into my terminal, cat my public key from my .ssh directory, copy and paste that out of the terminal, and then like paste it into the web interface on Platform.sh, which was the old man stupid way of doing that to begin with, because the CLI can also automatically do that for you, but I never did that. I'm a copy and paster. So I was totally happy to see that the product team wrote out this great new feature that just automatically somehow magically makes SSH keys for you or doesn't need them. Larry, do you even know how that's implemented or how that works? I don't. It's magic.
I don't know the details. I believe the basic idea is that it's not actually using keys. It's using a third party to issue temporary certificates, which do the same thing as keys in terms of encryption. They're still public key cryptography, but are not just a write once and then reuse a bunch of times. You're still logging into our authentication system, and then it's providing you with temporary keys. One of the advantages of this being that those keys are temporary, so they will expire automatically, which if you're trying to remove someone from project does mean that it gets removed as soon as that expires. But we can reissue them very easily. If having to expire and reissue an SSH key every hour would be not fun. But this essentially gives you an easier way to set it up, and the actual encryption values you're using rotate regularly rather than being long-term static.
Thank you. Okay, good. So maybe the second feature that I wanted to bring up is actually not even announced yet. Can we do that? Can we talk about the automatically renewing Let's Encrypt certificates? That launched, didn't it? I tweeted about it.
No, you didn't.
I think I retweeted about it.
I know we were working
I'm pretty
on
sure
it.
I did.
So we may or may not be leaking company secrets here, folks. Just bear with us. But Rob's a C-level, so he gets in trouble if so.
No, see, look at there. 18 hours ago, I retweeted Platform.sh saying, no more need to maintain certificate revocation lists, no more need to rely on users rotating their credentials. Find out how Platform.sh has made provisioning SSH certificates easier for our customers. Hashtag SSH.
Yeah, that's SSH. That's what we were just talking about. It's not the TLS certs from Let's Encrypt.
Oh, you're right. I totally read that wrong.
To be fair, it confused me too. But now you know, everyone, we are working on automatically renewing Let's Encrypt certificates. We just haven't actually launched it, but that is coming, I think, very soon.
Imminently.
Very soon, TM.
At the speed of Robert's imagination. Okay, good. Moving on from that faux pas. Embarrassing. Hashtag embarrassing.
Yeah. We have a question here from Plopix, who's coming in on, I think, Periscope. So someone's using it, apparently. He wants to know, can you enforce 2FA per project?
Good question.
I don't believe so, but that seems like the kind of thing we'd want to do.
Yeah, especially if like you're an agency and different projects are representing different groups of clients. Mm-hmm. Is that like the use case you're looking at, Plopix? I wonder if our like teams and organizations work that's eventually going to come out would make that easier. It's a good question for the product team. We don't know. Okay, so that is the use case, exactly.
So we'll take that as a feature request, and it sounds like a reasonable one to me. So thank you.
So keep the questions coming, people, because otherwise I'm going to have Larry start to read his entire 11 series installation on PHP 8 out loud, and that's gonna,
You've never heard me do a dramatic reading of something before.
Especially a blog series that goes to 11.
Is there anything better to do a dramatic reading of?
Well, don't know. I mean, you could read the source code of the CLI.
I'm tempted to say challenge accepted, but we're live, so maybe I won't say that just yet.
Yeah. Okay. Well, as I was mentioning, there is, for the PHP people out there, PHP 8 is this thing, and it's coming. And Larry knows all about it because he spent a lot of time with it, and he's written an 11-part blog series about PHP 8. Larry, what are the highlights?
Oh, the highlights of the blog series of PHP 8.
Aren't those the same things?
I defer to our readers on that one. 8.0 is a huge release. It's, PHP has an annual release. It comes out every fall. We just talked about it on our last Deploy Friday episode. And some releases are kind of small. They have a few features here, a lot of tightening. Others are enormous and have a huge amount of new functionality. The 7.0 was a massive, massive release. 7.1, 7.2, 7.3 were smaller. 7.4 was another huge release with a lot of new functionality. 8.0 is even larger. It does not have the same kind of performance boost that PHP 7 had. PHP is already one of the fastest interpreted languages on the market. So there's not that much room for improvements, although there is some, then that is happening. For me, the big three new features are attributes, constructor promotion, and named properties. Named parameters. Keep confusing those two. And what I like about those are that although they were developed independently, they dovetail together really nicely. And I talk about this a bit in one of the blog posts that is not yet out, but I just finished writing yesterday, so in progress. But what used to be like 15, 20, 30 lines of code can now compress into 5 and be much more self-documenting, easier to read, easier to write, because you have a more compact way to write classes. So writing a one-off class becomes a lot easier and cheaper with constructor property promotion. You have named arguments, one of the main uses of which is, hey, I've got a value object with 8 possible parameters on it. And so I want to fill in all of those parameters or only some of those parameters and create a new object. I can just pass in 3 of them with named arguments and ignore the rest. And the class will do what it's supposed to do, assuming the types are set up to support that. And so it becomes a lot more self-documenting, a lot shorter. You don't need to go look up what the defaults are for the 4th parameter that you have to put in the default value for so you can get to the 5th parameter, which is the one you actually want to change. You don't need to worry about that anymore. And then it also means needle and haystack versus haystack and needle. You don't care anymore. Just specify needle and haystack, and the problem goes away because you're just documenting it yourself. If you don't get that reference, then good. It means you haven't heard the FUD around PHP, but we're fixing that. And then attributes. If you used doctrine annotations or JavaScript, I believe has them. Java has them. Python definitely has them. They're metadata that you can attach to parts of your logic, which are then available through reflection. So you can assume, or you can define this method or this function is a listener for my event system. And I can just annotate it with a block of metadata code. We're actually using the syntax that Rust uses. And then that becomes available for your system to reflect on and introspect its own application and take default values out of that. If you've used Symfony and used annotations for setting up routes or dependency injection or doctrine entities, the syntax for that is now baked into the language, which means parsing it and using it is 10 times easier and faster, and you don't need an external library for it anymore. So I'm really excited about all of these, and there's a whole bunch of stuff I didn't even talk about that also makes me giddy, like match statements. That blog post is already out. Go read it. But yeah, I could talk the whole time about PHP 8, so I'll stop there because we have other questions in the channel.
Yay.
Whoa. Yay, yay.
Oh, WebAssembly. So for those not familiar with it, WebAssembly is a collaboratively developed runtime for pushing highly optimized, highly secure, pre-compiled code essentially to the browser that can then run browser side. Things like, say you're doing a game, a client-side game in JavaScript. That's a lot of heavy graphics processing, a lot of heavy computation, and JavaScript, great though it is not the best language to do that. What you want to do instead is write that in Rust and compile that from Rust to WebAssembly, ship that WebAssembly library as part of your web page download, just like any other asset. And then your JavaScript code can call into that WebAssembly library, tell it, hey, run this routine, function, whatever. That computes the next frame and passes that back, and then your JavaScript can update the DOM. I'm kind of very much oversimplifying here. The advantages are it is very tightly sandboxed, so it's really hard. I don't know of any security example. There are security vulnerabilities in it at this point. You can also write for it in any language that can compile down to WebAssembly. Ideally, you want to be doing that in Rust, C, C++, a language that does not have a runtime. However, you can compile PHP to WebAssembly. It involves compiling the entire PHP engine into WebAssembly because PHP is written in C, and you can compile that to WebAssembly and ship that to the client side. I've seen it done. I don't recommend doing it, but it is technically possible.
And why don't you recommend doing it? Just because other languages are more suitable?
Because pushing down a 5 megabyte PHP engine to the client so that you can then interpret PHP in the browser is not the most efficient way of writing code.
Sounds like the new Java servlet.
Careful, Octavio's right here.
Yeah, Rudy, is WebAssembly big in the JavaScript world?
Pretty big. It gets a lot of interest. I would be pretty excited to see how WebAssembly could be used in today's major front-end frameworks to do more heavy work today in a very more optimized way. Like, let's say, for instance, I don't know, React. I would love to see an experiment where you would have the reconciliation algorithm put into WebAssembly, so you do the heavy things in a super optimized way to have super fast renderings. For those who are not familiar with it, the reconciliation algorithm in React is the way that you compare the virtual DOM and the DOM that you actually want to display in order to know what to render in your page. So this involves to do graph transversals and that kind of stuff that can be pretty heavy. So they have ways of making that faster. But in very, very heavy front-end applications, that would be interesting to see the performance benefits that we could get, for instance, to have WebAssembly being used there. So yeah, it gets a lot of interest still in the
now you can also run
Java
server side, and that's an interesting space. I don't know a ton about it. It kind of competes with using something like the JVM or .NET CLI, and I have seen extensions that allow you to load WebAssembly modules into PHP code server side. I have not played with them. I don't know how well it works. I'm not sure it's a great idea, but I know it has been done.
Okay, I can see that on the Java side. Don't do that. Roll back. We did that mistake. Don't follow us. We are roll back with this.
That's kind of what I would have thought.
Yeah. Right now we have a native image like GraalVM that usually works very well when you decide to use something more execute once and done like any kind of serverless. Otherwise, just go to JVM because it has just-in-time compiler that makes your application better every time that you run and something like that. Furthermore, usually that's kind of WebAssembly allow you to do any kind of security issues, such as SQL injection, become easier to receive that, HTML injection, something like that, is more insecure than use something like JVM stuff.
Thank you. I kind of assumed that would be the case, but good to hear you say it. So we have another question from Plopix. Since we're talking about PHP 8 and that coming out, what kind of extensions do you think we'll have then when that's released? He was specifically thinking about some of the tricky ones. I guess those are the ones that maybe aren't the default enabled extensions that you would have to get from the Debian distribution. Is that what you mean?
So for those not familiar with it, the way PHP works, there's the PHP engine, which is written in C. Then there are extensions, which are also written in C or C++. And technically, I think you can write them in Rust now, although I haven't tried. And those load into the PHP runtime when it starts. And then there's PHP code, which runs at runtime, and there's a bajillion libraries available for that. There's several dozen extensions that are developed as part of PHP itself and ship with PHP that you can enable or disable. I expect all of those to be working day one, no question. Then there's third-party ones, such as Redis, AMQP, Blackfire, and several others that, for the most part, are connecting to third-party services of some kind, or wrapping some C library. Really, those are the only reasons you would need to write an extension these days. PHP itself is quite fast. And we'll be supporting those whenever their upstream versions have PHP 8 compatible versions. That took a bit of time with PHP 7 because there were a lot of internal changes. There are fewer internal changes in PHP 8, and a lot of those extensions were waiting until the PHP release candidate images started coming out. Those are now out. RC2 just came out last week. So I would expect a large percentage of those to be ready day of release. And those that aren't will roll out as they become available. We usually will refresh the PHP containers about once a month when there's upstream versions. So I don't know which ones are going to be available immediately. I'm hoping most of them, but history has said there will probably be a few missing for the first few months, but they'll catch up pretty quickly. Is that a Weasley enough answer for you, Plopix? Yeah. That's it. If you're just writing your own code for PHP, there are extremely few reasons anymore to write an extension. You probably want to just write it all in PHP user space or use the FFI library and bridge it that way. It'll make life easier for you.
Larry, I have a question to you about PHP.
Okay.
Because in the Java world, you have dependency injection that allow me to use any kind of interface, whatever I want. Furthermore, I have the option to follow the 12-factor application where I can override the whole configuration on production, for example. Can I do this something with PHP?
Absolutely. Modern PHP is mostly object-oriented and really doubles down on dependency injection for most applications. There are exceptions that don't, but most applications these days follow essentially the same guidelines as Java in that regard, or C# as well, of depend on interfaces, inject your dependencies via the constructor, not via setters. And that's actually one of the places where the new constructor property promotion comes in handy. Because if you have a service class that has, say, 4 dependencies that you're injecting by interface, cool, you know all of that stuff correctly, then old style syntax, you have to specify the property to hold that dependency. You have the constructor signature that specifies the thing you're receiving. And then you have a line in the constructor for each one that assigns that parameter to that property of the object. So you're repeating all of these variables 4 times. Constructor property promotion collapses all of that logic down to one line, and you can just specify it in the constructor signature itself, and PHP figures it out. So making dependency injection easier is one of the big wins of the property promotion. As far as doing 12-factor app and making your application run differently in production or in different environments, if you are setting your application up correctly, yes, PHP is very friendly to that. Not all applications do. Applications that are written to read certain configuration from environment variables play extremely well in that regard. And those are the ones that are easiest to make run on Platform.sh because it's easy for us to then just bridge our environment variables to the environment variables the application expects, and it'll work fine. Move to platform production, move to development branch, and it just picks up the values that it's supposed to have. Some applications are not written that way, and that is unfortunate because it makes it harder to run those on platform or any other 12-factor friendly hosting environment. So please, 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 PHP developers, allow your database configuration and your cache configuration and other services like that to be configured via environment variables, and don't put them in as hard-coded values in the same file as your other application configuration. That makes my life hard. Please don't do that to me.
Yeah. The point is not just about Platform.sh. For sure, that's a wonderful provider that we're working for, but about safety, right? I mean, you put your password directly in your code, it's not safe.
Bad things happen.
And yes, I read the biggest security issue in the software. That one was the second. And guess what? Who was the first?
SQL injection?
No. A database without user password.
Exposed publicly on the web. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, word to the wise. Don't leave your database publicly exposed on the web without a password. Actually, don't leave it publicly exposed on the web, period. Password or no.
Right. And on Platform.sh, your databases are all behind a firewall. That's managed by us, so you don't have to worry about that.
Exactly.
Much, much easier.
I have a call out, since we're not getting any more questions. I want to call out some content that we published recently, and let me just put that up there. And I spelled it wrong. Oh my gosh, it's KS Chan. Sorry, KS. I didn't see my typo. So this is a blog post that's a series about different journeys of people on the team. And I'm just going to call this out for a brief second in case you want to go read that and the other journeys. I think they're really interesting to see how a completely distributed company like ours has grown up and evolved over time. And I liked that we featured KS Chan on that because I was actually the person who hired him onto the team at the time. And was on the initial interview with KS. And I tweeted just earlier today that it was kind of a foregone conclusion when we had the interview. I already knew what the outcome of the interview was going to be before the interview, because KS had spent the several days leading up until his interview scouring our documentation, filing dozens of pull requests, making corrections and improvements on it, and even filed a couple of product bugs that he had discovered in his extremely thorough testing of Platform.sh, which he did to prepare for the interview. And so I was already anticipating that. And these are the things that you won't get in the blog post, by the way. You've got to come to the DevRel streaming to get these details. So one of our questions in the interview process for a long time was, and this is a great question, if you put a URL in the address bar and hit enter, describe all of the things that happen after that point, until you get a web page back in the browser. Go, give me as much detail as you can. And KS said, well, there are no fewer than 18 GitHub repositories specialized in answering that interview question. And I have one of them open in front of me right now. Would you still like me to answer the question?
Well played, KS. Well played.
Well played.
Yep. So that
probably I'm gonna answer. I still waiting my Chrome.
Yeah,
and my Chrome frozen.
That goes down as one of the epic interviews in the history of interviews for this company. So great job, KS. And you can read about the rest of his officially sanctioned story on the blog post.
Okay, as you talk about tutorials, I wrote one about, okay, I want to connect my MongoDB service in the Platform.sh. So let me share the link here. Here you go. So if you want to use MongoDB and Platform.sh and want to connect like off your local host, you can do that easily. So this tutorial I'm gonna explain you to use SSH tunnel with robot 3T, where you can follow that instruction and it's done. So basically, you can connect whatever you want. And as you can see, yes, we provide a user and password.
Cool. Thank you, Otavio, for that tutorial. That's pretty great. It brings up an interesting larger point that I'm not sure everybody on Earth is aware of. And until everybody on Earth is aware of this point, I think it's worth mentioning that we have a community site where you can log in and ask questions, where we provide tutorials and how-to guides. And you're welcome to visit and see the stuff that's there. There's a lot of great content there that doesn't traditionally fit into the documentation. And if you have a question, there's a question and answer section there that works like Stack Overflow, where we can, answer that for you, or other people can as well. And hopefully in that way, no question goes unanswered. I don't see any more questions. You've got like literally 10 seconds until Larry starts reading his blog out loud. He just does that automatically. It's like he abhors silence.
I do sometimes go back and read my own blog posts to see what my writing style has evolved, and how it's evolved. And sometimes I even retweet them because I like some of my old blog posts. They're good. They're my blog posts.
Good. Anybody else in this circle have any other interesting facts or tidbits to bring up? Yes.
Yes, I do. If you want to know more about Platform.sh with Java, this week I have a couple of conferences, so you can follow me at EclipseCon Europe. That's happened this week. If you don't speak part English, probably not, you're not sending me right now, but I have the Spanish version and JConf Peru this week as well. So follow me on JConf. And I guess that is it. At least what I remember. So follow me.
Otavio's pretty amazing because he's like an internationalized website. You can just choose the language that you wish to receive the content from, because he's doing conferences in English, Spanish, Portuguese, French, and Italian.
Because Otavio. But of course, Otavio, you are burying the lead. If you want to know more about Java, come to Deploy Friday this week, because you and I are interviewing Monica Beckwith and Herchan Walenga. I probably butchered your name. I apologize.
Yes.
You've got until Friday to practice.
Yeah.
Those are amazing because both are OpenJDK committer. So we are talking about Java with the people who make Java. So That's amazing.
I'm looking forward to that. My Java knowledge is decidedly out of date, so I'm hoping to get updated in a hurry.
Yes, this year we celebrate 25 years of Java. And probably the first question will be, okay, how can I make Java survive to more 25 years, right? So
can somebody get the link to
JavaScript?
the Deploy Friday?
And Java and PHP are contemporaries. They are both a quarter century old.
I read a thread on that recently. A whole bunch of other languages also came out at about that time. Was Ruby one of them?
I think Ruby's slightly older.
Like 2 years older or something.
Yeah,
is what I remember.
Yeah, the early 90s, there were a number of new languages that appeared.
The grunge languages.
grunge languages.
Isn't that when grunge was a thing too?
I wouldn't know.
Okay, I'm looking dated and you're looking out of touch.
Yeah, I found the link. So here you go.
Yes. So hopefully that one will
So
also be on multicast, so you can watch it on YouTube, which is the primary place we've been using. But you could also use Periscope or Twitch or Facebook or whatever. So,
okay, so grunge was mid 80s. I only learned about it in the 90s. That's why I thought it was from the 90s.
I don't have to say anything here. The joke just kind of makes itself.
Yeah, that's what I'm here for. Okay, good. So yeah, deploy Friday this Friday on Java. That's fantastic.
And then next week is Ruby.
Right, we're doing a tour of different languages and stacks. So you probably, if you watched Deploy Friday, you saw the JavaScript one recently. PHP was last week. So Java and Ruby. How does it continue from there, Larry? Are there more?
I don't have any scheduled yet, but I still want to cover Go and Python. So if you are a viewer of the show and are well-versed in Python or Go and can talk about the language as a language, then reach out and let us know. We might have you on the show then. Aha, and looks like Ruby also came out the same year. So 95 was a
Nice.
good year for languages. It's a good vintage.
It was also a great year for grunge, by the way, even though it was already 10 years old.
I'll take your word for it.
And we have a new social media. That's Twitch. Twitch, right?
Twitch.
Yes, Twitch.
Okay,
Well done.
follow us.
Follow us on Twitch.
Stalk us
Yes.
on all the things.
Please do. Probably we're gonna create a several application from scratch and deploy every day. You know, play around with some kind of application, Java, PHP, Ruby, stuff like that. This week, another week, I'm gonna be in trouble with several conferences, but probably after that, I promise you to create one application from scratch with Java and then deploy at Platformsh.
Yeah.
You're going to be in trouble with conferences? What are you doing at these conferences, Otavio?
A lot of presentation. And that was funny because Roddy asked me what happened with my time zone. Because probably he thought that was Batman or any kind of vigilante, because sometimes I answer a question like 1 a.m. in my local time, and sometimes I answer that question like 11 p.m. in my local time. And the whole point is the time zone. Because sometimes the conference is in Japan and it's like my 2 a.m. and sometimes it is US, that's mean my 8 p.m. So I'm around the globe and in Brazil at some time.
World Traveler Pandemic Edition.
Good.
So, Rudy,
Anything
do you
else?
have questions for us? Since
Oh yeah.
you're the new guy on the team, what questions do you have for us that you're willing to ask in front of a live studio audience?
Oh. I would like to know how far you think Platform is from the vision that you have of what a path should be, and how to get
Interesting
there.
question. Okay, so lots of unknowns there. What is the vision, and what's missing? So let me try and answer a little bit of that, because that's a huge, big meta question. And it's also interesting because internally in the company today, one of our product owners circulated some of the early design documents, which I had not seen before, which were really cool to go back and look and see what the vision is. So the vision has always been to take the entire aspect of developing and deploying applications down to the point of view of the developer. So the way the internet evolved, we ended up with developers and operations people. Developers wrote code for applications, operations people did server stuff, and they had to come together and make things deploy. So that collision of those two competing needs and interests also led to an entire branch of the industry called DevOps, which is now quite large, and there are huge conferences about it, and people who do nothing except what they call DevOps, which is nothing except allowing developers to efficiently write and deploy their applications. And the history of Platform.sh actually comes out of the conflict that is represented in those two concerns and the need for DevOps to begin with, because as developers, we always thought, wouldn't it be just great to just be able to, write the code and have it be deployed, and know that it works, and like never have the it worked on my laptop problem, or never have to set up new development environments, and never have inconsistency problems between the live site and the testing site and the production site and the staging site and all of those things. Those were the original concepts, and in a lot of ways we've achieved those. We've made it so that you can instantly clone a running website with all of the services and the data. We've made it so that you can describe the services that you want to run in code, so that it's version controlled infrastructure along with your application code. We've made it so that the build process for all major application frameworks happens automatically in the cloud and is consistent from developer to developer. We've made it so that you can start from 70, 80 different industry standard templates so that you can get going coding really fast. But interestingly, we've done all of that without providing some of the standard bells and whistles that you see from other hosting companies that do nothing except like run a server for you. Like, we don't have a big wall of dashboards that show you CPU and uptime and performance and all of that. And that's kind of been a conscious omission, because there are ways to achieve those things with external tools, or with the CLI, you can prize out a lot of that information. So it's not easy, and it's not really customer friendly at this point. But the good news is, we're actually, since we've achieved a lot of the core of the original mission and the key value, now we're circling back and bringing some of those features into fruition. And one of the internal initiatives is around what we call observability, which is going to surface more and more interesting data and metrics about your sites in the form of dashboards in the interface or through the CLI, so that you don't have to do that work for you. So we've done a lot to achieve the core vision and the core mission of the platform as a service that we wanted to build. But now we're like in the process of circling back and like filling in some of the gaps and just making it better. Like, it deploys fast, but it can deploy faster. So let's make it faster.
Yeah, I would agree. The core mission and the core purpose of the app is there, and it works, and it's been working for years. But there's still a lot of incremental improvements and a lot of polish, a lot of fleshing out that we can do, and to make certain use cases easier and more friendly. And that's work in progress. And you see us periodically adding new functionality and adding new features that cover some of those gaps. And at this point, I expect we'll be doing a lot of, this piece felt like it was missing. Well, that's not missing anymore. Like a couple of years back, we didn't offer Let's Encrypt certificates out of the box. We're like, but everyone should be encrypted these days, so let's just add that and make that a thing. And at the time, it was implemented in a way that required manual redeployment to renew it. So we're working on fixing that, because we don't want to make you have to think about that. That should be automatic. And so we're working on making that automatic. So it's a lot of that kind of, now that the framework is solid, let's flesh it out with all of the bits and pieces and niceties and smooth over rough edges. And that's an ongoing process that no software ever finishes.
Cool, thank you. excited to take part in all of that.
And for those watching at home, I think we're playing around with settings in StreamYard to see how many people we can have join and exit the session at the same time. So
it's amazing. StreamYard gives us so many buttons to push. If we pushed all the buttons, we would trigger everybody's ADHD, paranoia. Everything would be triggered. The screen would be like jumbling everywhere. But it's great software. So far, I can only really recommend it. Streamyard.com.
So that about wraps it up for today, I think, unless there's final questions. We'd love to hear if you think these are a good idea. Should we keep doing these from time to time? Or now that we know how the tool works and we're done having our fun, just go back to Deploy Friday. Let us know. We want to do what's going to make life better for our customers and keep them informed and deploying. So let us know if these are helpful to you. If so, we'll keep doing them.
And don't forget, deploy every day on Friday.
Exactly. I love how Rob looks so serious there.
Man, it's so late in the evening over here. You want a serious Rob? You've got to get me in the morning.
Yeah, your morning, I'm still asleep. We have 4 different countries represented on this call, by the way.
Yeah. Good. Shall we wrap up?
Yes. Any wrapping paper?
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Rudy. Thanks, Ottavio.
All right.
Thank you.